Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world. How are you doing today? This is the Joe Gaither Show right here in West Alabama, downtown Northport, and of course, more importantly, on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. I am Joe Gaither. You are the listener, the viewer, and it is Football Friday. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, we are 28-ish hours away from Alabama kicking off against LSU, and so we are so excited to talk more Alabama-LSU with our BamaCentral crew today. Of course, we want to invite you to rate, review, subscribe to the show on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. You can watch us, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, right there at Joe Gaither 6 or at BamaCentral on the YouTube channel. And of course, all the shows right there on BamaCentral.com. Before we get rolling on the show, we always encourage you to subscribe to our other Bama Central Broadcasting Network podcasts, our friends, Blue Collar Unplugged. They just had a huge episode. I listened to it yesterday as I was walking the dog. They talked with Seth Greenberg. I want you to listen to it, subscribe to it, and let me know how many curse words Seth Greenberg said in the program. It was hilarious. He spent time with our guys, Blake Byler, Matthew Gibson, and Jacob Pickle on the newest episode of Blue Collar Unplugged, talking Alabama basketball, talking Wake Forest, Alabama scrimmage, talking maybe college game day coming to town. You will have to listen to it to find out, and we always encourage you to subscribe to their program. But we don't want to waste any more time. We want to get Football Friday rolling with our friends. Austin Hannon joins us once again. Wyatt Fulton, Katie Wyndham. Let's see what we want. Yeah, that's the box we want to do. It's been a while since we've seen Austin. He went away. He said, I'm too smart for this program. You guys need to have a shot at making correct picks before you get me back on. I did have a perfect week last week, Austin. But you missed it, and so I guess that's why you're coming back on. But we're excited. Austin Hannon, follow him at Austin Hannon _ on the X machine. Follow Katie Wyndham at Katie Wyndham _ and my friend Wyatt Fulton at Fulton W _ We are going to be talking Alabama LSU, and we're going to be breaking down the other SEC games, and we do have 3 outside the conference games to break down as well. So let's get all right into it. Ladies first, Katie Wyndham, how was your week and how are you doing? You pumped up for the weekend?
My week was good. I am excited for this game this weekend. It's really crazy that
we lost Katie already. She's going to jump onto her hotspot. That's no problem. We'll give her a second. No, there she is.
She's back. She's back.
I was going to say my screen didn't even freeze this time. It didn't. I didn't see. Normally, I can kind of sense when it's going away, but it didn't this time. But I'm looking forward to this game tomorrow. Another great Alabama-LSU matchup. Excited for it.
It's going to be a blast. Wyatt Fulton, how are we doing today, sir? You had a good week? You pumped up?
Great week. Excited for a great weekend of college football. A lot of good games this weekend.
Austin, tell us where you've been. Barbados, you've been to Paris, you've been to Japan. What's the last couple of weeks been? We've been missing you. You doing well?
Joe, I'm just trying to come over to your house. From what I'm seeing, you're making the big paychecks these days. You need to have us a little house party over there, it looks like.
Absolutely. Come on by. So everybody's welcome, but you have to play the piano and sing something, Austin. You got anything in your repertoire? You play chopsticks?
Well, the only musical past I have was 6th grade when I was required to play the recorder in music class, and I wasn't very good at it. So my parents used to get on to me all the time because I wouldn't even call it it wasn't a grade back then. It was more of like a letter, and my letter was not very good in music class. So that's kind of where it ended for me. But I know people that can play piano. So
hot cross buns on the recorder, Austin Hannon.
Yes, absolutely. That was level 1.
Hot cross buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny. Hot cross buns. You got it, man. Hey, actually, on Sunday, I'm going to be dropping something musical for Alabama basketball season. I got it recorded. I'm building it together. I had someone listen to it today because I was like, I don't think this is very good. I don't know about this. I don't know. Should I put this out? And yes, it was my mother, but I said, Mom, you cannot give me a mom compliment, please. You cannot. You need to listen to this actually and see if. And so she said, oh, I think it's better than you think it is. So we'll do a little more work, and on Sunday, hopefully around basketball games on Monday at 7:30. So hopefully around 7:30 on Sunday, I'll be releasing a little fun musical thing to celebrate Night Oats and his path.
Okay.
So we'll see about how that
Excited
goes.
to hear it.
Maybe it'll be a big risk, and maybe it'll be a big flop, or maybe it'll be funny, and everybody will get pumped up for Alabama basketball. We'll certainly find out as the trio of us just left Nate Oates, and we talked to Sam Walters and talked to Jaron Stevenson. You guys can read about that right there on BamaCentral.com already. We're excited for basketball season, but cannot get too far ahead of ourselves. This week is all about Alabama and LSU right here, 6:45 CBS. The last time CBS will be in Tuscaloosa for the foreseeable future. Let's just start right there. I have never really been a fan of CBS, partly because of Gary Danielson. Obviously, the production value has been very, very good, really, ever since I was a child. But Gary has just driven me absolutely crazy. So, Wyatt Fulton, what's your take? Alabama, last time on CBS, the conference is leaving. Now, Nick Saban made a great point last night on Hey Coach, saying that being on CBS likely won Mark Ingram the Heisman Trophy because Alabama was on a national network each and every game. And, who was it? Toby Gerhart, the Stanford running back, wasn't. And what was it? Ndamukong Suh as well. He only got on national TV a couple of times that season. What's your opinion? Alabama and more importantly, the SEC moving off of CBS.
It's going to be weird. Nothing screams football to me more than a big 2:30 primetime kickoff with Alabama facing, Tennessee, LSU, or Auburn, or some, Ole Miss and Texas A&M the past couple of years, just facing these big opponents at 2:30 on CBS. It's going to be weird, but, ESPN's got the money right now, so SEC is going to make that switch.
Austin, you've grown up with CBS. I don't want to make fun of your age, but basically everything you know is ESPN, SEC on CBS.
Yeah, and so you nailed it perfectly. I'm very sad about it. I mean, SEC on CBS was kind of the thing that got me into college football as a kid, and really before Brad Nessler. I mean, Verdon Lundquist was always my favorite, and it was always a tough day. The day in 2016 when he had to leave the studio and decided to, switch things over to retirement-ish. Do a little bit of golf. He kind of quit the football thing. So that was a sad day. I do think Brad Nessler has done a really good job since he took over then. But yeah, I mean, the SEC and CBS is kind of a thing that they've been coexistent with me in my life. So it'll definitely be different. But I mean, the fact that I cover Alabama games, I usually don't watch them on TV anyways. So it's not too different for me now, but it's definitely a sad day because CBS has definitely been something I've been into my whole life here.
Katie Wyndham, you remember Jefferson Pilot just like I do. So obviously we're not going back to Jefferson Pilot regional days. Alabama and the SEC will head to ESPN. We'll be on the Big Boy Network. Cable, everybody's got to get. Oh gosh, that's going to stink for the average Alabama fan. I don't have anything against ESPN, but it's nice to turn on regular network, local channels and see Alabama on ABC, CBS, NBC. What do you make of the relationship ending with CBS?
Well, they'll still be on ABC some. Actually, probably make a little bit more than they have been. But yeah, I mean, I feel like fall college football is synonymous with that CBS intro music. I remember when they would show like the players at the beginning with Tim Tebow, and it would just highlight through all the different teams and those clips. And so that's kind of what I associate it with. But also like what Austin said, I mean, really since 2015, there's been very few Alabama games I've watched on TV because I've been at most of them either, as a student or covering them. So it will be a little different. But I remember growing up, I thought CBS, especially when I was at the games, always had the longest commercial breaks, and I never liked that. But it seemed like they would take a lot of commercials and they would have long breaks. But that's pretty much everyone now, especially with the kind of the clock change rules that even ESPN takes a little bit longer commercials. So, but I like a lot of people over ESPN too. So, and I'm one of the few people that still has traditional cable because I like to watch stuff live. So,
you're not alone in that, Katie. I'm still rocking and rolling with Comcast, Xfinity.
Yeah, Xfinity.
I've got Xfinity.
Okay,
Yeah.
3. Wyatt, 4?
YouTube TV over here.
Oh, well, we get the games, we get the plays before you do. Ha, 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 in your face, buddy. Oh, do we all – am I on an island with the Gary Danielson? Not a big – look, for me, it's Chris Collinsworth, number 1. I cannot stand you. And it's Gary Danielson, number 2, for my least favorite announcers in football. Now, there's a lot of them that I do love. I wish Alabama could play with Todd Blackledge and Sean McDonough every single week. Now, they broke that crew up, and that stinks. But am I alone in the anti-Gary Danielson camp?
I don't hate him. I remember when I was younger, I thought that he and Vern were biased against Alabama, and I thought they loved LSU and Florida. That was my perception growing up. But honestly, I truly have not watched that many games on TV the last decade, pretty much. I'll go back and watch some of them, but at that point, I guess I already know what happens in the games. The commentary isn't gonna bother me as much, So I don't know. I know why a lot of fans don't like him, but I don't have a huge problem with Gary Danielson.
I don't think he's biased against Alabama, which is usually the big complaint. I just think he just is annoying to me. He gets stuck on certain plays or aspects of the game and just hammers them over and over and over again. Wyatt, are you in the anti-camp, or what's your feel on old Gary Danielson?
I actually haven't watched a ton of CBS games. Normally I'm at those games as a fan, but I'm with Katie. Vern and Gary always seem to be a little bit more favoritism towards LSU and Florida and things like that. But, Gary's good at his job. I mean, there's a reason he's been at CBS as long as he has. But, I wouldn't mind muting the TV every once in a while and just, hey, you know what? Let me just watch football. I don't need the commentary.
Great. Brad Nessler's great. And Austin's been covering games for a long time. He doesn't remember what Gary Danielson sounds like.
No, I mean, I understand he's got a tough job, and I know a lot of people don't like him and whatever, but his voice, just like Vern's and Brad, I mean, they all are kind of simultaneous with kind of what I grew up watching. So I have respect for him, and I know that he has a tough job, and I don't think it's ever been his intention to make Alabama fans or Florida fans or Georgia fans or anybody mad. And I think he said that in a recent interview that he most of the time people are nice to him in person, but we know how social media is and how people like to talk on Twitter and Facebook. So, you're going to get what you're going to get with that.
Certainly. Well, I will separate my. Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
I was going to say on the hyperfixation front, I will say it's funny if you go back and watch the 2012 SEC championship game, Alabama versus Georgia, when Quentin Dial had that blindside hit on Aaron Murray, just knocked his head off. That was the pre-targeting days. Which, if that happened now, he would be obviously immediately ejected. But they got real fixated on that and were real concerned about that play for a long time. I'm trying to remember if it was on an interception or not, or a turnover and he did it, or what happened.
Turnover.
Yeah, and I think it was Quentin Dial just lit Aaron Murray up. But also just to clarify, I thought that when I was younger that he was biased against Alabama. I don't think that anymore. But he does. I agree with you on the point of he will get hyper fixated on some stuff.
Well, none of us are going to be listening to Gary Danielson on tomorrow night. We're all going to be in Bryant-Denny Stadium watching Alabama and LSU from several different perspectives. It's going to be a blast. Look, okay, let's start with what do we want to start with? Let's start with my biggest concern for the game, and I'll see if Austin, Katie, or Wyatt either agree or will talk me down. My biggest concern is not Alabama stopping LSU. I think they'll get some stops. My biggest concern is the Alabama offense starting so slowly or being inconsistent. I feel like if LSU ends up, let's just put it in the Tennessee perspective, ends up 20-6 at halftime because Alabama's offense has been, or 27 at halftime because Alabama's offense has struggled either going 3 and out and punt, or having a red zone turnover. Maybe it was unlucky, but it was a red zone turnover. And you're facing a 20-7 deficit. So my biggest concern is keeping up with their offense. I think with the defense, Alabama's defense will gain stops. We'll get some stops. A couple of stops. Obviously, it's going to be a huge challenge against the number one offense in the country. But my biggest concern is Jalen Milroe, the offensive line, the game plan, staying on schedule, getting into 2nd and 6, getting into 2nd and 7, 2nd and 5s, and then making 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, so it's easier conversions and the ball matriculates down the field. You end up going 3 and out. Think about the Arkansas game. We were all there. Arkansas, you go 3 and out, first two drives. The third drive, you're facing a 3rd and 9. And boom, from the heavens, Jalen Milroe, 79 yards. But without that, you would have gone 3 and outs in a row. My biggest concern is staying on the field, and at least moving the football on their defense. Yeah, their defense is terrible. Their defense is bad. And we've had LSU guys on all week saying, oh, Joe, don't worry about that. You're going to move the ball. Just am worried about the inconsistencies we've seen from the Alabama offense. So, Katie, am I unfounded? Is the LSU defense that bad that no matter what, Alabama is going to move the football? Everybody's saying, Joe, they're just going to score 30, 40 on LSU's defense. Or am I right to think, well, you're going to need to play pretty much right out of the gate from the Alabama offensive perspective?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track there. It was interesting listening to the LSU guys you have on your show this week, and I'd encourage people to go check those out to kind of get ready for the game and get the perspective from them about LSU if you haven't gotten a chance to watch LSU a lot this year. But yeah, those guys were saying if Alabama gets 1 or 2 stops a half on defense, that they'll win because the LSU defense is so bad. But Alabama has not started games well on offense at all. And I was talking about this with my dad last night. I did not go back and check it, but I feel like Alabama's won the toss like almost every time this year that they've deferred or that they've gotten the ball to start the second half almost every game. And I was saying this game, it honestly might not be a terrible thing whether they win or lose the toss if they have to get the ball first and then you need to go score on your first drive so that you have the lead over LSU so that you're not playing from behind against Jaden Daniels and the LSU offense. Now, the LSU defense is not good. I mean, I think they were saying, and based on the score, I didn't go check this either, but that against Ole Miss, they didn't get a single stop. Is that right? The LSU
yeah,
defense?
no, not at all. Not a stop.
Yeah, and then, that day when we were at A&M, they had the LSU-Missouri game on in the press box, and the LSU defense just looked so bad at Missouri, just couldn't get stops. Their tackling looked terrible. So, you would think, you would hope if you're Alabama that you're going to be able to move the ball against this LSU defense. But like you said, Joe, they've been inconsistent. They've started slow. And so I don't think you can afford to do that. I don't think you can get in a hole against LSU like you did against Tennessee. I mean, but then in a way, it should be easier to score on their defense. But I think the problem is going to be if Jaden Daniels gets the lead, it's just going to be maybe easier for him to keep that lead. But I think Alabama coming off the bye, having an extra week to prepare. I think we've seen more things clicking on offense. Austin had a little bit of a report this week, I think, about Kendrick Law. I think Alabama's going to try some different things in the offense that maybe it's going to get clicking. And will this be the week against a not very good defense that you maybe finally see the offense put together a 60-minute performance?
Austin, why? You got thoughts? Jump right in.
Yeah, I think that you guys have said it. The defense is bad. I don't think it's going to be an issue. And you're comparing it, Joe, you were comparing it to the Tennessee game a little bit. I think there's a good point to that, but Tennessee's defense is much better than LSU's to start with. And let's remember the end of that first half too. Alabama had the ball in the red zone and was going to take a lead, and the ball hit Jermaine Burton in the face with the sunlight in his eyes, and Tennessee intercepts it and ends up scoring a touchdown. So things got a little nasty there at the end of the half, but it was really an unfortunate, sequence of events. And then the defense was a little worn out and had to go back on the already, and then they gave up a touchdown. So I don't think the offense is going to start slow. I think they understand the offense that they're going against, and they're that urgency from the start. I think it's going to be a really big thing to run the ball, keep LSU's offense off the field, keep Alabama's offense on the field, and kind of through drives. We've seen them all year kind of want to be a deep shot offense. I think they're going to take a little bit of a different approach on Saturday just so that it doesn't turn into a Tua Tagovailoa Alabama game where it's just touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Because once they get into that, all it takes is one Milroe mistake or one anybody else mistake. Next thing you know, LSU's got a lead. So
that game and gives LSU an extra possession early. I mean, it was early.
I can't see Alabama, at all trying to turn it into that kind of game. And I think that they know that those deep shots, passing the ball down the field is going to be there for them if they want to. But I think it takes a little bit of better coaching to realize that even though we could do that and we could throw for 70 yards, probably a lot during this game, maybe that's not the best idea just because of what you're facing on the other side.
I think both Katie and Austin are making really good points there. Like Austin said, those deep shots are going to be there. Guys are going to be running open deep. They know they can hit those passes deep, but both Jace and Roydell are averaging, I believe, over 4.7 yards per carry right now. So running the ball, wearing down an already depleted LSU defensive front, and keeping Jaden Daniels and that offense on the sideline is going to be your biggest success.
All right, so the flip side, my main concern for the defense is so many one-on-one matchups. Everyone's going to be. I mean, you're going to be one-on-one. You're going to have Malik Neighbors is going to be one-on-one with Kool-Aid McKinstry. You're going to have Brian Thomas Jr. one-on-one with Terry and Arnold. You're going to have Kyron Lacey one-on-one probably with Malachi Moore and or Jalen Key. You're going to get so many guys one-on-one. Mason Taylor, he's going to be with Deontay Lawson / Tresman Marshall or Josh Campbell. And then, of course, Logan Diggs as well. So, like, Logan Diggs, it's okay, Katie. Bring the dog in. It ain't no thing. Logan Diggs as well is going to be, right there. You're going to have to make one-on-one tackles. The defensive linemen are going to have to play their gaps. And yes, have I loved what I've seen from this Alabama defense throughout the entire year? Yes. You erased the Texas fourth quarter, and I think this defense is probably the best defense in the whole country. Now, you can't erase the Texas fourth quarter. It happened. We all saw it. But I think this defense is really damn talented and really good. The issue is you get one slip, one missed tackle, one matchup that LSU thinks, oh, we got you on that matchup. Is it Tresman Marshall that he takes a bad angle on Mason Taylor? Is it, oh, goodness gracious, whatever the offensive line matchup is that opens up Logan Diggs, the read option? Coach Saban's been talking about kind of their triple option style run. We're going to read option or to hit a slider, hit Mason Taylor or a slider, Kyron Lacey across the formation, and we're going to make you make plays in space. Alabama's done a lot better job of this. And Austin, I'm coming to you first because you pointed out on Twitter this week about really the improvements from the Alabama defense in tackling in space. And if it really is, you can comment on this, if it really is as simple as Kevin Steele has improved just the fundamentals, or the players are just more talented than last year. No disrespect to the players on the team last year. My biggest issue is, goodness gracious, if they're going to spread you out, they're going to play they're going to have a lot of weapons, and every weapon is daggum good. So what's the confidence level that, Austin, that you have in Alabama being able to make plays, win your box, win your one-on-one matchups?
Yeah, a lot of people were upset thinking that I was kind of putting it all on Pete Golding. I don't think it was necessarily Pete Golding's fault. And I was never a guy that said it was all his fault when he was here. I mean, there were plenty of fans that thought that. And I still felt like, I mean, if you look at the numbers while he was here, Alabama's defense was good. It wasn't as good as it's now or it was before, but it wasn't anywhere near LSU's is right now or anything like that. Like, they still had year in, year out pretty good defenses with pretty good players. And you were talking about it before, and it made me think, I think this is just another big week for the secondary. I mean, you talked about the Texas game. That was a very bad look in that second half in that fourth quarter. Going against guys like A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, and they just absolutely just tore Alabama apart. That was a big thing going into College Station, and I think the secondary did a much better job against that talented group of wide receivers. And so now here comes another game where they can redeem themselves again for that Texas performance. And you're going to have Malachi Moore healthy. You're going to have, I mean, this is what they're here for. This is why you have Kool-Aid McKinstry. This is why you have Terry Arnold and Malachi Moore. I mean, you have three of the best corners in the conference in the country. This is what they're here for. This is the game that they need to be ready for. And I think they will be. And I think that this LSU offense is great, and it's going to put up numbers and yards. But I think that they can get enough stops on the defensive end that's the pick's going to be coming. But I think that that's going to be the reason Alabama wins this game, is because they're able to get more stops than LSU can. It's not necessarily that Alabama's going to have to outscore them, because I don't think they can do that. And I think that they know in practices and in that room that they're not going to be able to play that kind of game on Saturday and win it. So it's going to be extremely important for all those cornerbacks to be ready. I think the same goes for Caleb Downs and everybody in the back end. So LSU is going to throw a lot of different looks at them. I think Malachi Moore is a huge player in this game, based off what you said, Joe, and based off what I've seen from LSU's offense. They like to keep everything kind of in the middle area of the field. They like to. Nick Saban's even called it a triple option this week. They like to move players around within the slot line of scrimmage, the hash marks. And that's exactly where Malachi Moore and Deontay Lawson are going to be. So it's a huge game for them. And I think that this secondary is ready for the challenge.
Katie Wyndham, what do you think about the defensive matchup here? Alabama, can you get two? Can you get two stops a half?
I think they can. I think I've said this on here before, but I think this is the best Alabama defense Alabama's had since 2020. And so y'all hit on the secondary a little bit. I think a lot of it too is obviously I'll hit on the kind of the front end of the defense is, are those edge rushers, are the guys up front going to be able to finish and get sacks of Daniels? Or are they going to let him get past him and force those guys in the secondary to not just cover, but also make tackles when he kind of slips out? are you gonna your guys in the middle, the linebackers, are you gonna leave guys as spies to kind of see what he's doing, and are they gonna make the tackles and reads they need to in the middle of the defense? And so, because a couple weeks ago when I asked Saban about what had led to the interceptions, he kind of talked about it. A lot of it starts with the pressure up front. Will the defense up front be able to create pressure, make Daniels get rid of the ball a little bit quicker, do some things he doesn't want to do? Will Alabama be able to stop the run? And I think they will. I think obviously kind of like what the LSU people you had on this week talked about, LSU is going to score. Like it's not going to be a game of the century 9-6 game, nothing close to that. But I think this defense will be able to get some stops. I think last week against Tennessee, it was kind of, or I guess that was 2 weeks ago now, but last game, it was kind of different of, that was the first time we'd seen all year a team on the opening possession just go straight down the field and score a touchdown. But I wouldn't be like stunned if that happens against LSU, but the defense rebounded. They responded after that. Yes, they gave up 20 points total in that game, but the second half obviously was phenomenal. And so I think they will be able to get some stops, kind of like what Austin said. I think they'll be able to get more stops than LSU does probably.
Wyatt, you got some defensive thoughts. How anxious are you to face the number one offense in the country?
Well, it's a darn good thing I'm not the one that's going to be running out there on Saturday night because my anxiety is just about through the roof with this game. Good thing that Coach Saban's able to handle those guys a little bit better. But I think it's going to be really important for the guys that are within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage defensively. That's, your linebackers, and that I would even include Malachi Moore in that as well, like Austin was saying. It's going to be a big game for your front and for your slot corners and things like that.
All right, so let's talk about a great memory that I have, Alabama and LSU-wise, and let's kind of make a parallel. All right, you go into 2015, Alabama-LSU. Leonard Fournette has run over every single defender in the SEC or on their schedule to that point. I will never forget Leonard Fournette's big run against Auburn, stiff-arming a guy and flipping a guy over his head and running down the sidelines. Looked unstoppable, looked like a beast. And everybody said, oh, Leonard Fournette, shoe in for a Heisman. And he came to Alabama. He came to Alabama on November 7th. So right around the same time, 4 years, goodness gracious, 8 years ago. 8 years ago. Leonard Fournette came into the game averaging 193 yards with 9 straight 100-yard efforts. He had 13 yards on 15 carries entering the fourth quarter before scoring his 16th touchdown 16th touchdown of the season. So Leonard Fournette, he ended the night with 31 yards on 19 carries, 1 touchdown, and thus ended his Heisman Trophy campaign. We go into tomorrow night's game with Jaden Daniels leading the nation in overall total yards. He's beating Michael Penix by 400 yards, and he's looked virtually unstoppable. The guys that we had on this week basically said if Joe Burrow did not exist, that Jaden Daniels would be having the single greatest LSU quarterbacking season ever. And so obviously second to Joe Burrow, he's in the Heisman Trophy conversation. How much parallel, what are the parallels that we can draw from that night? It's also going to be a night game, and that was an evening game. I can remember, I'll tell on myself a little bit. I was in Bryant-Denny Stadium yelling as loud as I could at Leonard Fournette as a very angry student at Leonard Fournette, and I felt vindicated as he kept getting stopped. Won't be doing any yelling this week. We'll be as silent as we can be in the press box. Might need an elbow or two from Katie Windham to shut the bleep up. But will Alabama's defense respond the way that the 2015 defense did? I mean, goodness gracious, this is another parallel to the 2015 season, going back to the very beginning of the year with the quarterback battle. And you're facing kind of the same. So, I mean, obviously it's not the running back, but will Alabama's defense, Terry Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry, they're dadgum good players. Kool-Aid's going to be a top 15 draft pick, probably. Terry Arnold is making himself money each and every week who draft stock. These guys are going to take, they've talked about it taking personally this year. Katie, will we be shocked at the end of the night on Saturday night when Alabama's defense has held LSU to 24-17, something like that, and turned over Jaden Daniels, bottled him up, and really shut down his Heisman Trophy campaign?
I would be surprised and very impressed if they held them to 17 points. If they held them below 20, I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly would be surprised if they shut him down totally. I think there are some parallels to 2015. I think you also look at Leonard Fournette running the ball was LSU's main offense. I couldn't even remember off the top of my head who their quarterback was that year, and I just looked it up.
Brandon Harris.
And he went 6 of 19 in that game. So that was an offense, an LSU offense that relied on Leonard Fournette a lot. Now, obviously, this year's LSU offense relies on Jaden Daniels, but they also have a lot of other weapons. And so I think it's a little bit different in that sense. And me and Austin kind of talked about this on Just a Minute on Thursday, and the fact that I think –
where can you listen to Just a Minute?
On BamaCentral.com. You can also check it out on Twitter. That I think if he wins this, if Jaden Daniels leads LSU to a win, it'll probably wrap up the Heisman for him. But I think even if he loses but has a good game, I think he could still win if he still puts up a lot of yards and touchdowns against this defense. And kind of not to sound like a broken record, because I talk about this almost every Friday. Obviously, I think turnovers are going to be big. Alabama hasn't gotten an interception in a couple weeks. And so will they be able to turn him over? He's not thrown very many this year. I think he has 3 on the season, which is obviously a great touchdown to interception ratio, 25-3. And so will Alabama be able to get the pressure to him, make him uncomfortable, force him into mistakes? Even I think if you're able to sack him a lot or a couple times and keep him from scrambling for a lot of yards, I think that would be big. But it is another interesting parallel to the 2015 season. We kind of saw that a lot with Ole Miss week, and we'll see it again this week too.
Austin, Jaden Daniels killed Alabama with his legs last year. Not really the arm. The arm obviously was a part of it, but will Alabama's defense surprise us by the end of the night?
Well, this is a different Jaden Daniels than we saw last year. I think going into that game last year, and really that entire season last year, Brian Kelly and LSU were trying to kind of hide Jaden Daniels' passing and not really try to use it as much because it was not his strong suit at the beginning of last year. And really, everything kind of changed for him that night. Like since that game, he has been a completely different player than he was before that game.
Certainly.
And yeah, he was he was highly efficient passing that night. I think he just probably less than 200 yards if I had to guess off the top of my head. But made smart throws, made the right throws, got first downs, moved the chains. And then, of course, like you said, he had almost 100 rushing yards and was LSU's leading rusher. So I still think that they're going to try to play into that a little bit this year, but I think he's a different player. I don't see it being maybe as big of an impact as it was last year, but definitely something that Alabama, I'm sure they've been focused on. I mean, I asked Deontay Lawson about it, and just his facial reaction after I said it, oh, yeah. That's something that Saban and everybody's been talking to us about all week. We've seen the film from last year. Like they killed us in that area. So, LSU's going to try to utilize his legs, whether it be him running the ball or running to create the pass. It's going to play a factor, but I think he's a great player. And your comparison to 2015, I think is a little, I just think that was such a one-dimensional LSU offense was really we're going to line up in the I formation and run the football right at your face with Leonard Fournette, and it worked for most of the season until that game. And so LSU came in the game, Les Miles, in typical Les Miles fashion, said we're not going to change anything. We're going to try to run the ball just like that at Alabama too. And back in the day, back in 2015, and we're starting to get it now. You don't do that against Nick Saban's defense. So LSU, Katie couldn't even pick off the quarterback's name from the top of her head. That's all you need to know. That was very one-dimensional. I think this game's a lot different than that, but I do see your comparison with the Heisman, one of the Heisman frontrunners coming into Bryant Denny Stadium, and I think that he'll probably perform a little bit better than Leonard Fournette did that night.
Wyatt Fulton, where will this defense end up in the Alabama annals if they're able to shut down Jaden Daniels, and how much will your gump gland be pulsating at the end of the night if that's the case?
It's going to be huge if Alabama's able to shut down Jaden Daniels. His passing ability has improved drastically. You see it. LSU's wide receivers, one of them leads the country in yards, but the other one leads the country in touchdowns, I think. So, LSU's passing is going to be huge for this game. But Alabama's ability to shut this down, if they come into Bryant Denny Stadium and just completely nullify him, to reference 2015 like they did with Leonard Fournette back then, it's going to be huge, and it's going to be a big test for this defense and this secondary.
All right, so that is obviously a very unlikely storyline. I don't expect that to happen, but I was just kind of trying to make some parallels, and we'll see. We'll see we'll see where we're at. Trying to think of an angle we haven't thought of quite yet this week. Let's talk. I got one more topic to kick around, and then I want everybody's keys to the game, and then we'll do picks for SEC picks. We'll throw in Kansas State at Texas, Washington at USC, and Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. Last topic before we ask for keys to the game, keys to victory for Alabama, is Tommy Rees. We graded Tommy Rees on Football Friday. I think it was last week. Yeah, it was last week. We got some pretty good views on that and a lot of comments. And thank y'all for commenting on BamaCentral.com. You can comment at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on Facebook or at BamaCentral on X. Right there on any of our articles, and we love anybody following us on Facebook and or Twitter. So we graded Tommy Rees last week. Most of us gave him fairly favorable grades. You guys can all understand and expect. Chris said, "Oh, it's not. I can't grade him quite yet. It's still a work in progress. He still wants to see more before he gives him a grade for now." I said B plus. I think he's grown a lot already, but Tommy Rees going against his old coach. Not only his old coach, Brian Kelly coached him at Notre Dame, but really the coach that put him on to coaching, gave him a coaching break as well. Brian Kelly wanted him to come down and join him at LSU. Tommy Rees said no, stayed at Notre Dame for an extra year, then came to Alabama. Is that going to be any sort of storyline? I mean, we always make this a thing about Nick Saban against his old assistant coaches, and what is it, like 33-3 or 34-3 or something like that for his record against old assistant coaches, and he only has lost in the last year or so with Jimbo and Kirby getting him. What's going to be the significance of Brian Kelly and Tommy Rees, their relationship? Coach Saban has extremely downplayed it, but why would he play it up? He always wants to, make no story is a story. It's all about the game. Wyatt Fulton, you'll go first this time. What is the significance of Tommy Rees' relationship with Brian Kelly?
I think it's important. Like you mentioned, Brian Kelly wanted Tommy Rees to come with him to LSU. Rees turned him down and ended up coming to Alabama just a year later. But I think it's going to be big. Brian Kelly and Tommy Rees, they know each other. They work together. They know each other's tendencies and things like that. So maybe behind closed doors, there was a conversation happening of, okay, well, what, on the LSU side, what's Tommy Rees, what is his tendencies and things like that? What have you seen from film that you remember from Notre Dame that, we may be able to pick on? Same thing on Alabama's side. What are some things that you've seen with LSU film that Brian Kelly will try to exploit? So just conversations behind closed doors and things like that. Obviously, like you mentioned, Coach Saban's, a story is never a story. It's all about the game. It's all about between the lines. But I do think there is a little bit of a chess match there behind the scenes.
Katie Wyndham, is there any significance to the teacher or the student going up against the teacher?
I would say like slight significance, if that's a thing, if that makes sense. Because, yeah, there are going to be some things, some tendencies maybe that Brian Kelly knows, but also think Tommy Rees probably has a lot different personnel at Alabama than he did at Notre Dame. And so as far as that sense, it's a really different offense than maybe he ran there. And so Saban was asked about this yesterday on McAfee, and I'm trying to remember, of course, he downplayed it on there, but he was also talking about when he goes against former assistants. I think so much of it is both teams have analysts or have armies of analysts that break apart everything anyway, especially at this point, 8 games into the season, that they're looking at all that stuff anyway, that like, I don't know if how much of a role their past relationship is going to play with this week's game.
Austin Hannon, we're making something about nothing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not too concerned about that. I think it's interesting, actually. You were going to say it. I forget when it was during the offseason, but Tommy Rees made it public that Brian Kelly actually asked Brian Kelly, "Hey, Nick Saban called. Do you think I should do this?" And Brian Kelly said, "Would 100%. Like, have you seen what the offensive, what Nick Saban's assistants have done in their career? Like, this is something you want to do." And so Rees did it. Like he said, I think it was in his introductory press conference with us on media day. He kind of said, "Yeah, look, like I have my ideas and everything, but like we're gonna do things the way Nick Saban and the way Alabama does them." So I think that he's kind of taken that to heart this year. He's kind of put away some of maybe his things that he's Notre Dame. So I don't think I think obviously Brian Kelly knows kind of the brain work and the framework of what Tommy Rees wants to do. but it's going to be a little bit different than the way he coached it at Notre Dame. So I think it'll be cool to see them talk to each other before and after the game. But other than that, I don't see this being a huge thing, especially with, the way LSU's defense is playing.
All right, so on Monday on the program right there, and if you miss any of the programs, you can check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. Our friend Katie Wyndham is a Spotify listener, so you can be as well. Or watch them on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter right there at BamaCentral on the YouTube channel, The Joe Gaither Show on any of those podcast platforms. On Monday, I gave my keys to the game. And just to recap, I said Alabama needs to start fast, have no turnovers, be patient on offense, and on defense, have sound tackling. I don't mind if you steal any of my keys to the game, but we're going to do 2, 3, 4, whatever your keys to the game are, because you guys are much, much smarter than I am. So Katie Wyndham, you give us what are your keys to the game for Alabama, and then we will do picks. We'll save the Alabama pick for the end. Right now, as you're thinking about it, the Alabama pick is still a 3-point line.
I think I am gonna steal one of yours, but it's kind of what I was thinking of earlier. What I talked about a little earlier on the show is I think a key for Alabama is going to be a quick start on offense. You cannot come out of the gate slow again. You're going to have the whole crowd behind you. I think this is going to be. We saw the player Saban have talked about how big the crowd was against Tennessee. We saw Saban run over to the fans after the game, something he doesn't usually do. I think it's going to be another really good crowd. First night game at home in a couple of weeks. You not technically, unless I guess Ole Miss loses, but you pretty much have a chance to seal up the West this week. And so if you can get the crowd even more into it right away by maybe scoring on your first possession, I think that's going to be huge. Put the pressure on LSU right away. I think that's going to be big for this team. And then I think it's going to be can you force Jaden Daniels into any mistakes would be one of my other keys on defense is whether it's not necessarily an interception because he doesn't do that a lot, but maybe, just any sort of mistakes, holding on to the ball for too long, negative plays, making a bad pass on third down, whatever it is, just so that you can get those stops and get that top scoring offense in the country off the field.
Wyatt Fulton, keys to victory for the Crimson Tide.
I think I'm also going to steal one of yours in sound tackling. That's going to be big, not letting guys get yards after contact and things like that. I had mentioned it earlier. It's going to be a big game for guys within 5 to 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. Your defensive line, it's good to get pressure pass rushing, but at the same time, you're going to do no good if your pass rushers are 5 yards into the backfield creating rushing lanes for Jaden Daniels to extend the plays and make a play outside the pocket. So just being able to collapse the pocket rather than maybe just speed rush by a tackle and get behind them. And then your linebackers too, making plays on these running backs. Like you had mentioned, Mason Taylor, the tight end, keep making a good sound tackle, making good sound plays on him and things like that. And just being able to not allow LSU to get these extra yards after the contact.
Austin Hannon is our lead football writer right here at BamaCentral.com. So give it to us. What are the keys for Alabama to win on Saturday night?
Yeah, the couple things I already talked about. I mean, they've got to stay on the field. And, being a Miami Dolphins fan, I'm starting to see what NFL teams want to do to slow down that offense is just keeping them off the field. If you watched Sunday Night Football the other week, Jalen versus Tua, what did the Eagles do? They just ran the ball over and over again and just kept Tua and Waddle and Tyreek Hill, those guys sitting there all game. And when they're sitting there, they can't hurt you. So if you keep Jane Daniels on the sideline, he can't hurt you. And I think that goes a long way with running the football. That's obviously the key to doing that. I think Jace McClellan's in for a big game on Saturday night. We saw a really good look for him against Tennessee 2 weeks ago when he got his career high in carries. He was starting to kind of get it close to, I think, 150 in yards. And down the stretch of that game, Tennessee just didn't want to tackle him anymore. They handed it off, and it was just chunk play. Tennessee didn't want any more of it. I think that if they can do that effectively at LSU, they're going to have a good chance to win the game. Mental errors. That's what Saban's talked about all the time. It's how can we limit turnovers. I think if Alabama doesn't have some kind of penalty party in this game and they don't turn the ball over, I don't really see a chance at LSU winning the game. If that's the case, if Alabama goes out there, keeps a 0 in the turnover column, doesn't stack up a bunch of penalties, they're the better football team. If you just put it on paper, Vegas obviously doesn't think so. They think on a neutral field, this would probably be pretty much a pick 'em with Alabama getting the 3 points at home. But In my opinion, I think Alabama's the better football team. So if they do what they're supposed to do their job, that's another Nick Saban euphemism. I think they have a great chance. And Katie said it a little bit earlier. I think they got to pressure the quarterback. When LSU is on the field, you know how good of a player he is. So if you just let him stand back there, it's going to hurt you. And so people say, well, when you blitz, that opens your defense up to giving up chunk plays. Well, so does just not getting any pressure. I mean, if you're going to let them stand back there and just throw the ball all night, then they're going to get the big plays anyway. So you might as well take a chance and try to get a sack or two. And like Katie said, maybe he'll throw an interception if you get some pressure. So those are my three keys. I really do think Alabama has a great chance to win the game, but we'll talk about that more in a minute.
All right, so we're down to the business end. Goodness gracious, Austin, that was perfect timing. We're right here at 45, so we're here to do our picks for week number 10, right? We're week number 10? Yeah, week number 10 in college football. Goodness gracious, it is November. Oh, yes, it is the business end. Oh, my, I'm just seeing this one. I clicked over to ESPN. Did Oregon buy a big old banner for Bo Nix on the ESPN graphic? A big old Bo Nix graphic on ESPN right now. Bodacious. Goodness gracious. If Alabama ends up playing Oregon in a playoff or bowl game, that will be a huge storyline. So let's do some picks. Alabama, LSU, will save it for the end. We're going to talk about SEC games. Sorry, Tennessee, you're not up this week as you're playing UConn. We're all probably going to take the Vols, so not even worth talking about Tennessee and UConn. 35-point favorite for those gambling. Don't gamble on that line. That's too many points. They'll probably cover it, but still, you'll be sweating it out watching a blowout, and you will not like that if you're gambling on that game. Let's start SEC games, and then we'll do the 3 out-of-conference games, and we'll finish with Alabama-LSU. So we start at 11 a.m. We'll go just like we usually do. We'll go Austin, Wyatt, Katie, and then myself, and then Katie, Wyatt, Austin, and myself. So we'll do it just kind of like a snake style. Texas A&M is at Ole Miss. Hotty toddy, 3-point favorite for the Lane Train. Does he keep the great season going? Austin Hannon, give us the winner and why.
I think Ole Miss at home. Texas A&M's had such a weird season. I really do think they're a good football team, and I obviously picked them to win in Knoxville a couple weeks ago, and they nearly did. I'm not clearing any Jimbo Fisher slander, but I do think they have a good team this year, and they've had a tough schedule. And A&M fans don't really care about those excuses because of the recruiting classes and the money they're putting into this. But I think it's going to be another tough game for them. Ole Miss still knows what they have at stake, and I think that's different. I think Ole Miss knows that where they still have to beat Georgia for it to matter, but they're still in a position to be in a position, as people say, with loss, and they're at home. I think Jackson Dart kind of keeps it rolling, and Ole Miss, gets the win there.
I'm on the same kind of train as Austin here. Ole Miss knows what's at stake here. Ole Miss knows that, Alabama slips up, all of a sudden you've got a game against Georgia that could decide the SEC West. And so I think Ole Miss is just going to keep rolling at home. Like Austin said, Texas A&M is a good football team. It's just they've had a weird year, critical injury at a bad time. It's just really kind of derailed everything for them.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ole Miss too and make it 3 for 3 so far. I think if it was in College Station, I may pick A&M, but because it's in Oxford, because it's at 11 a.m., because Ole Miss still has so much to play for at this time of year where they don't necessarily, I'm going to go with the Rebels.
I think you all laid out exactly why I'm taking Ole Miss as well. So, again, we're skipping UConn and Tennessee. Oh, my gosh. Another 11 a.m. game. Arkansas is at Florida. Oh, what a terrible game. Do not watch this game either. Terrible football. But Florida's back in the swamp, so they might look competent. Florida, 3.5-point favorite coming off the Georgia butt whooping. Katie Wyndham, do you like the Gators, or will Arkansas get their first SEC win of the year?
I'm honestly kind of surprised the line is that small for Florida at home against
Arkansas.
The line's only 3.5. Arkansas only scored 3 points at home against Mississippi State last time out. So, but then again, this Arkansas team's been a little bit of like a mystery because they did look, horrific last time out against Mississippi State. But then you play it close with Alabama, you play it close with Ole Miss, you play it close with LSU. But because it's in the swamp, I'm going to go Florida.
Unfortunately, I'm also going to pick Florida here. Just Arkansas has not been a cohesive team whatsoever. I think firing Dan Enos over the bye week probably was a step in the right direction. But
Dan?
At this point in the season, I think it's just too little too late. And, I think Dan Enos has ruined KJ Jefferson's development. I thought he was a phenomenal quarterback with a bright future. Now let's hope he ends up in the right NFL situation to maybe make some steps in his development. But Florida at the Swamp, that's a tough place to play, and I think that's going to give him the edge.
Yeah, I think Katie nailed it. If you are a person that likes to gamble, I'd say there's a high amount of confidence in Florida -4 at home. They just went to Jacksonville and got smacked around by their rival. So now they're angry and they're coming home. You don't want to go against an angry Gator. They haven't lost a home game all year, and they're kind of ahead of schedule right now at 5-3. They've kind of had a sneaky good year. Obviously, people are not so happy about them after last week's game, but I think they go home, and I think they beat Arkansas, who's absolutely reeling at this point and winless in conference play. Florida will win this one double digits.
Austin, I'm right there with you. I think Florida will win. Arkansas, very, very bad. So I think that's going to be, it's going to be a pretty easy win for Florida. Look, Florida at home, I think is a good team. Florida on the road, I think is absolute dog water. So that's why they've been stuck kind of in that 7, 8, 9 range of our SEC power rankings throughout the year. All right, we're skipping South Carolina hosting Jacksonville State, much to Austin's chagrin. He loves the game.
I actually do. I wanted to say something about that game because I thought you were going to ask.
If you got something,
and it doesn't have to do with South Carolina. It has to do with Jacksonville State, who I've actually watched a good bit this year. I've watched them a good bit because they play usually on Tuesday nights when nothing else is on, and so I've got to watch some of their games. They're a good football team, and so. If, at any point in this game, if it's close, I wouldn't be surprised. I think the line's at 15 or 16, if I had to guess. I think I saw it the other day. I think Jacksonville State keeps this a one-score game the whole way. Just the way South Carolina's playing. Rich Rod, he's got a feeling for the big games. It's going to be a little bit tough for Jacksonville State to go into an environment like that because they're not used to that, obviously. But remember, they don't get to play a bowl game. They don't get to play in a Conference USA championship. So this is really Jacksonville State's opportunity to kind of make a name for themselves this season with all the work they've been doing. I think they have a good chance to keep this a one-score game. I'm not going to go as far to say as they're going to win it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to keep this in single digits in South Carolina.
Did you see your boy Shane Beamer this week talking about Halloween?
Oh, his kid? Yeah, I heard about it.
Oh, the kid said I couldn't go to the Halloween party because I'm 2-6. Well, buddy, you might be 2-7 after this week. I will laugh my tail off. Yeah, that man has coordinator, lifetime position coach written all over his face. And I mean, I know he comes from football royalty, but I got no respect for his emotional control. If he loses to Jacksonville State, he might punch a locker and break his hand. He'll end up with a broken foot and a broken hand. I will be so that will make me laugh so hard. Oh my gosh. I know you're a big South Carolina fan. You're a big Beamer fan, so I hope that I just think he's.
I like the guy as a person. I think.
He seems like a nice guy. He seems
they
like
haven't
a guy
gone well this year. I think I'm not out on him yet. I think a lot of people jumping that bandwagon just because it's been a poor season. I think their football team's just not as good this year. Their defense has a lot of issues. Their offensive line is no good, and they've got a stockpile of injuries as well. So a lot of things not going well there. But I think that he's still got potential there in Columbia.
Well, that's a hard job. So it's not really. I think people, just because you don't win the SEC East at South Carolina doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. It's a very tough place to recruit to, especially with Clemson right there in the backyard and the other SEC powers that you're competing against. Let's go with 2:30 2:30 on CBS. The appetizer per se. The appetizer is number 12 Missouri at number 2 Georgia. The Missouri, the cute little Tigers that could, they are just rocking and rolling. Yeah, they lost to LSU, but Eli Drinkwitz and them boys, they keep scoring and they have a chance to make some noise in the SEC East with a big old win. Austin Hannon, do you have the cojones to take the Missouri Tigers, who are a 15.5-point underdog, on the road in between the hedges?
No, they're not going to win in Athens. The dream season's going to come to an end finally for Missouri. I think it's been a great year, but week by week, just watching at what Georgia's doing, I'm really starting to get more impressed by Carson Beck week in, week out. I think he's really become a really good quarterback there. We kind of got to see Georgia seems like these last few games, they're kind of starting to hit their stride. And we saw them do it last week without Brock Bowers when people had all those questions about, is Florida going to beat Georgia and Jacksonville? And obviously, I didn't get to make a pick on the show last week, but I had no doubt in my mind that Georgia was going to run away with that big-time victory. And it just seems like – and now let's just throw this in there. If you didn't notice, Georgia's now not number 1 in the polls anymore, so that gives Kirby Smart a little something to talk about before the game. as they were pushed down to number 2 after winning 25 straight games and 2 national championships. I think they're going to be ready to go. It's got big game feel in Athens, and they'll take care of business. I think Missouri can keep it close, though.
Wyatt, how many times is Kirby going to say, they don't believe in you? 2-time champions, they still don't believe in you. Everybody doubts us, number 2. They're going to beat the brakes off Missouri. What do you think?
I get a feeling Kirby Smart's had that number 2 ranking up on every TV, every sign, everywhere in that locker room. I was watching the ranking show on Tuesday night, and as soon as Georgia popped up on number 2, Greg McElroy's sitting there. Oh, Kirby Smart's doing backflips. He's like, Kirby Smart is so excited that they were ranked number 2 on Tuesday night. I think, like Austin said, the dream season for Missouri, it's been a great year for them. I think it comes to an end in Athens. Athens is just, it's got a big game feeling. Georgia can potentially, I think, win the East, or if not all but close it out against Missouri here. Georgia's just going to, it seems like they lost the best player in college football and got a little bit better as a team as a whole. So I just think Georgia's going to run the field with them.
Yeah, I got Georgia too. We did see an interesting game between Missouri and Georgia last year in Columbia with a not as good Missouri team as they have this year. But yeah, I don't, and I think the line shows it that even Vegas, even though Missouri is 12th in the committee's rankings, that they don't have a ton of respect for them, which honestly, looking at these lines this week, there's kind of some wild lines. But yeah, I think Georgia, I won't be surprised at all if they cover.
I'm with you, Katie. I think Georgia is going to be out for blood. Kirby's going to play the motivation disrespect card. And I do like Missouri, and I like Eli Drinkwitz. And just as Austin said, they are having a good year. If you go into Athens and lose, that doesn't make your year bad. Missouri still, I think, is proving themselves to be, on the uptick just a little bit. Drinkwitz, you got to put it together for more than just a season, but I am taking the dogs right here. All right, I'm so happy to be in Bryant-Denny Stadium this weekend because I will avoid at 3:00 on SEC Network the Auburn Tigers going to Vanderbilt. Oh my God, what a terrible matchup it's going to be. Auburn 12.5-point favorites against Vanderbilt. Kenny Seals, AJ Swan going to be able to outduel one of Hugh Freeze's quarterbacks, or will Auburn get their second SEC win in a row? Katie Wyndham.
I think Auburn's going to get their second SEC win. They're working their way up to bowl eligibility. They had an offensive explosion for them last week against Mississippi State. I think it was like the first time they'd had over 100 passing yards against a Power 5 opponent in like months, or like since last season, something crazy like that. Peyton Thorne against Ole Miss had exactly 100 passing yards. So they, for them, they started to figure things out a little bit last week. Unfortunately for them, even though it's a road trip, it's at Vanderbilt. There will probably be more Auburn fans there than Vanderbilt fans. Vanderbilt's having another rough year, and so I think Auburn's going to win. The Hugh Freeze hype's going to keep getting bigger and bigger, maybe setting up for a more intense Iron Bowl matchup in a couple weeks.
It's gonna be tough. Auburn's winning this game. Auburn's 100% going to win that game. But I have seen Hugh Freeze had talked about, going more up tempo and kind of starting to run maybe more his style of offense with Peyton Thorne. And that's what they did last week. And like Katie said, they had a offensive explosion, if that's what you want to end up calling this. But
their standards from how they've looked this year, that was not explosion for them.
Yeah, for Auburn, it was an offensive explosion, but it's Vanderbilt, like rough year for Vandy always in football, and Auburn's going to get their second SEC win in a row.
Yeah, I mean, that win last week for them, I think it means a lot. To win an SEC game like that at home, they're starting to feel good about themselves. Like Katie said, the offense kind of started clicking a little bit against not really a terrible Mississippi State defense, not a good one, but not a terrible one. So I think they're going to take that confidence. And I mean, Vanderbilt, they're one of the worst defenses in the country right now. Auburn will be able to do whatever they kind of want, I think, in the running game. And Vandy's also playing musical chairs at quarterback right now, so that doesn't help out their case either. I think Auburn will probably win this one pretty big.
I like Clark Lee, but man, that Vanderbilt job, I mean, we just talked about the South Carolina job, but the Vanderbilt job is 10 times harder. Oh, gosh. So, yeah, we're going to Auburn. I don't know about that 12.5-point line, but maybe that's my bias creeping in. I will give Auburn the victory there. So, another kind of a awful game. Kentucky is going to Mississippi State at 6:30 on SEC Network. God, SEC Network, you got the shaft this week. SEC Network got UConn, Tennessee, got Auburn, Vanderbilt, and got Kentucky, Mississippi State. What a lineup for our friends at SEC Network. Kentucky at Mississippi State. The Big Blue Nation, 4.5-point favorite. They're coming off a loss at Tennessee at home against Tennessee. Mississippi State obviously has lost to Auburn last week. I literally despise Zach Arnett. I think he is an awful coach. So, Austin Hannon, what happens here?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We've
is
talked about this matchup a lot because me and Katie have too, because of Steve Robertson on your show, kind of comparing these two programs. And I've kind of said I understand the sympathy, but I also think that Kentucky has been a program, and they've got the results, even though they're in the SEC East. And this is kind of an opportunity for them to kind of put that debate to bed. Will Rogers not playing is a huge key. I mean, Mississippi State's offense has just looked worse than it already was bad without him. And Mike Wright's not. I mean, there's a reason he played at Vanderbilt. He's not that good. Mississippi State can't score any points. And Kentucky's kind of gotten beat up a little bit. They lost 3 games in a row. This is a big spot for them, though, because you don't want to head to Alabama next week and lose in Starkville, and the next thing you know, you're 5-4. I don't think they will. I think they'll use this as an opportunity to build up some confidence going into Alabama and Kentucky.
I'm with Austin. Ray Davis for Kentucky is having a great season, and just like Austin said, that Mississippi State defense is not great. It's not terrible, but I think Kentucky's just going to lean into the run game and get a good win in Starkville, heading with a big matchup coming next week.
I don't think I realized Kentucky had lost 3 in a row, so that makes me think they're really going to want to turn it around. But Mississippi State hasn't won an SEC game at home, and this is probably going to be their only chance to do so because they have Ole Miss at home. So this is honestly probably the toughest one for me to pick because it's kind of like a mid-off. I mean, Kentucky's better than Mississippi State, but I guess I'll go with State at home.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Ooh.
The first time someone goes on an island during this time, we love it.
I got to switch it up, too. Since they both pick Kentucky, I was like, I'll switch it up.
Well, I'm not picking Zach Arnett. They're gonna lose at home. I was so dadgum angry at you, Sam Pittman. How did you guys lose to those bozos at home? 7-3. Oh, gosh. I'm going with Kentucky for everything that Wyatt Fulton said. Ray Davis, they're going to run and smash them in the face over and over and over again. And Kentucky's going to come away with a very ugly victory. All right, we're going 3 games out of conference, and then we will wrap up with Alabama, and we'll go a little bit quicker on these. So we're going Kansas State at Texas. Number 3, Kansas State. Number 7, Texas. Texas, 3.5-point favorite, right in front of Alabama in the college football playoff poll. Katie Wyndham, I think you're up first right here.
Texas.
I'm gonna pick Kansas State here. No Quinn Ewers for Texas, and if you watch the box score last week, they blew out BYU. But in reality, if you look at the level of play and things like that, that game's actually a lot closer than a lot of people think it was. I think Kansas State they smell blood in the water, like I said, with no Quinn Ewers in that game, and I think they're going to give everything. I think they're going to give their all.
Yeah, I want to be bold with Wyatt. I was going to say Kansas State. No Quinn Ewers. It's in Austin, though. I think this is going to be a game that probably Texas wins on a game-winning field goal, but don't be surprised at all if Kansas State does win this game. I think Wyatt made a pretty good pick there. They're just really good defensively. They're a smart physical team that doesn't really make mistakes, and they're playing well right now. They kind of stumbled a little bit in the middle of the season against Missouri in a couple of games, but they're kind of starting to hit their stride again like they did last year when they ended up winning the Big 12. And they're going to be very confident going into Austin without, Quinn Ewers playing. I'll give the slight edge to Texas, but I think Kansas State definitely has a chance at it.
I'll back you up. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if Kansas State wins, that's bad news for the Big 12's playoff hopes, I would say. Because Oklahoma has the loss to Kansas, and Texas will have 2 losses at that point. So it's not going to be great for the Big 12.
I'll back you up, Wyatt, just for the fact of fun. I feel like it's going to be a very close game, and so just to make it 2-2, we'll go with Kansas State together. Oklahoma is playing Bedlam this weekend. Oh, I just lost my list right there. Oklahoma's playing Bedlam this weekend at 2:30. Number 9, Oklahoma against number 22, Oklahoma State. The last Bedlam in Big 12 history. Oklahoma, a 6-point road favorite. Austin Hannon, do they bounce back from the Kansas loss?
Ooh, this is weird because they're a 6-point favorite on the road against an Oklahoma State team that's absolutely surging right now. They were terrible at the beginning of the year, and then they beat Kansas State on. Me and Blake watched it together in College Station. I mean, beat Kansas State soundly. And ever since then, now they're ranked. I mean, they've reeled off a few wins in a row. It's the last bedlam. I'll say Sooners. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but this is going to be an interesting game. And, you know, like always, I'm sure there'll be a lot of points. So if you're into that kind of stuff, watch this one.
It's going to be a big game, like we said, like we're saying, last bedlam game in the series, at least for the foreseeable future. It's going to be, I think Oklahoma's the better team. They showed they were vulnerable to teams who like to run the ball last week, and Ollie Gordon's having a phenomenal season at running back. Oklahoma State.
I think I'm going to go with the Cowboys too, just because of it being the last bedlam, because it's in Stillwater. I think those fans are going to be really into it. Oklahoma's not looked good the last couple of weeks, which I'm sure there's some sense of them wanting to get back on the horse, but they really could have lost to UCF. UCF at home. Did lose last week at Kansas. And so I haven't watched Oklahoma State, I don't think once this year, but so I don't really know a lot about them, but I'm going to go with them at home. Just a sense of this is the last bedlam for a while, and them kind of wanting to knock Oklahoma completely out of the playoffs.
Let's leave Austin on an island. We'll take an Oklahoma State as well. All right. So I'm with you, Katie, that I haven't really watched Oklahoma State either, but you just hit all of my thought processes with home field advantage. And, you guys are leaving us for another conference. Bleep you. It's going to be a lot of anger in the building right there. Boone Pickens Stadium. So let's leave Austin on an island, and we'll take 3 Cowboys against 1 Sooner. Last out of conference game right here, Washington at USC. Caleb Williams and them boys at 6:30 on ABC. Number 5, Washington against number 20, USC. The Huskies, 3-point favorite. Michael Penix duels with Caleb Williams. I guess, Katie Wyndham, you're up first right here.
This is a tough one for me because really Washington has not looked great the last couple of weeks after they beat Oregon. USC hasn't looked great a lot of times this season. Their defense isn't great. So I think I'm going to go with Washington on the road still.
Katie hit it on the head. Washington has not looked great the past couple of weeks. USC hasn't either, but the Coliseum's an incredibly tough place to play. At one point, I thought this was reigning Heisman winner versus future Heisman winner, not necessarily leaning that direction right now. I think this is the weekend Alabama gets a lot of help that they needed, and I'm picking the Trojans at home.
All right, we're talking about Washington fooling around, and they have, but it's come against teams that, maybe they're a little complacent against. Maybe it's a little bit sluggish because, we're playing Arizona State, or, we're playing Stanford, or whoever else they're playing that's in the bottom of the Pac-12. This kind of gives them another opportunity like that Oregon game did, kind of put themselves on a national stage. And I have absolutely zero confidence in that USC program right now. They just seem to be completely at it since losing that first game. Things are not going well there. And I think this is an absolutely great opportunity for Washington to kind of put their name back out there. It's obviously the favorite in the Pac-12 and an undefeated team still. So this USC defense is terrible. Michael Penix is still, I think, the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. So this is a huge stat padding opportunity for him. And I told you earlier that if you're gambling money, definitely put it on Florida -4, and then the rest of this one, Washington, I think it's 2 or 3. You're going to want to do that as well. I have a lot of confidence in Washington on Saturday night.
Woo! All right. Well, Austin, your confidence shakes me just a little bit. Maybe it's my hope that I'm taking USC. I do not really think that Caleb Williams is this generational prospect that all my Bears fans have been talking about for the last 6 weeks. But I'm putting my hopes on him for this weekend. We'll take USC. And really, I'm not impressed with Lincoln Riley either. But, yeah, we'll make it clear that this is not an expertise pick. This is more of a hope. I hope USC pulls an upset and gives the Crimson Tide a lot of help. All right, last we go. We only have one more. There's no more games left, right? No. 6:45, Bryant-Denny Stadium, the doubleheader, the last time CBS is in Tuscaloosa for the foreseeable future. Number 14, LSU against number 8, Alabama. The Crimson Tide, a 3-point favorite. Jalen Milroe versus Jaden Daniels, getting revenge, maybe, or doubling down for Brian Kelly. SEC West on the line. Austin Hannon, final thoughts and the pick.
I teased it a little bit earlier. I'm going Alabama and the points. I think the home crowd plays an impact. I think the Alabama defense makes and we watched. Let's go back to week 1. All right. Ever since then, LSU hasn't played a lot of good defenses. Joe, you talked about the other day, a lot of bad defenses, a lot of points scored. They're dangerous, obviously, but when we saw them go against Florida State, they did some things, and albeit early in the season, they did some things that made LSU struggle a little bit. They turned the ball over a little bit. And next thing you know, Florida State just kind of beat them into submission in the second half and ended up winning the game by 21. And that was at a neutral site. And I think Alabama right now is playing really good football on the defensive end. I think that we see a really good game from Tommy Rees, which it's hard not to have a good game on offense when you're going against this LSU defense. And whether or not, I don't even think this is going to be a game where Alabama has to outscore LSU and win 50-55 or whatever it may be. I think this is a game where Alabama is going to get a few stops. LSU is not, and Alabama is going to win and cover.
I agree with Austin. I'm taking Alabama and the points as well. Florida State, like you had said, just kind of beat them into the ground towards the end of that game. Florida State's ranked, I believe, in the 30th. They're 30th in total defense. Alabama's 17th currently. So this is going to be the best defense LSU sees probably all season. I think Alabama's going to get some necessary stops probably early on, and then they'll play from ahead pretty early.
I think Alabama's going to win and cover, which, I've been pretty terrible at picking Alabama games so far this year, but I think that if they win this game, they're going to cover, kind of because of what Austin said. I don't think it's going to be like necessarily super close, and because the spread is as small as it is, I think Alabama does cover in this game.
All right, I'm going 34-28 Alabama Crimson Tide. I think that LSU will score just enough to kind of make the Alabama fans nervous and make the Alabama fans kind of worry. But Coach Saban said it on Thursday night for Hey Coach. He said, this team hasn't played a real 60-minute game, but what they have done is embrace hard and play hard and deal with hard very, very well. Last year's team, he complimented them for being very talented, but said they didn't deal with hard very well at the end of Tennessee and at the end of the LSU game. I think this team has gone through a lot of the fire. Are they great? Are they perfect? No. But they have a lot of belief in one another. They have a lot of belief in the coaches, it seems like. And I think that they're just going to find a way to win. I'm going with 34-28. I think Tommy Rees calls a very patient game, and it might frustrate the Alabama fans just a little bit, but you're going to see a lot of Jace McClellan. You're going to see a little bit of Roy Dell Williams. And is this the Justice Haynes week? Have we been saving Justice Haynes for the LSU matchup? Maybe. I'm not going to say that for sure, but I think that you might see him get a carry or two. I think we're going to see a lot of running backs get action this weekend. We're going to have a great time in Bryant-Denny Stadium, 6:45 on Saturday night. You can follow it right here at BamaCentral.com. We've had a lot of fun on Football Friday. I appreciate everybody jumping in and watching us. Joe Will has been commenting. My lady Julian's been watching us as well. Says, let's go Alabama. You guys can comment anytime on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, right there at Joe Gaither 6, at Bama Central on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Doing shows all week long, Monday through Friday. I might have a bonus show tomorrow. We'll see how a phone call goes with a certain five-star quarterback. We might have a bonus show in the morning, so we will find out how that goes. But if we're not, we'll all be at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Follow us at Bama Central, at Austin Hannon _, at Katie Wyndham _, at Fulton W _. The three of us will be in the press box. We'll have Blake Byler, maybe. We'll have someone else. We'll have a handful of us in the press box covering all things Nick Saban, all things Brian Kelly, all over all the coverage at BamaCentral.com. So we'll be back on Monday to break down the game. And oh my God, is basketball here. Monday, doubleheader, women's at 5 o'clock, men's at 7:30. I'll be all over both games. Tuesday, we'll have Mr. Brian Pasnick. And Wednesday, we'll have LaRon McClain. Oh, my gosh, it's going to be a huge week already next week. But first, we will play and watch and cover Alabama and LSU. So for Katie Wyndham, for Wyatt Fulton, for Austin Hannon, we love everybody watching and listening, and we love everybody reading us and following us at Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.